I was once married to a man who showered me with love and affection. But everything fell apart when I crossed paths with a girl who became my undoing. Guilt gnaws at me, as I am well aware that I merit the harshest judgments. I realize now that I made a monumental blunder, betraying someone dear who cherished me. I failed to value the love I received. Ruining time remains a hopeless dream, but if only it were possible. Heidi, my ex-husband, and I shared 5 years together. Throughout that time, he adored me unconditionally, enveloping me with attention, care, and love. But perhaps I merely allowed myself to be loved. Initially, I reveled in his attentiveness, finding it delightful. Soon, though, I came to take it as my due, and eventually, his overbearing concern began to irritate me. He was good in every sense of the word, agreeable, amenable, always ready to bend. I misinterpreted his qualities as weakness. He was just too right. He devoted himself to me entirely, making me think the only thing missing was a halo above his head. And he longed for children. However, at that moment, I felt it was too soon. I wanted to live for myself. Eventually, I realized I didn't want children with him because I doubted we'd stay together for life. I pursued a career in hairstyling, initially honing my skills in budget-friendly barbershops, before securing a position at an upscale salon located within a hotel complex just 2 years later. There I quickly became chums with both the administrator and the salon's proprietor, a vibrant young woman by the name of Harper, who was merely a couple of years my senior. Aptly, the salon bore her name, Harper. Harper was decidedly high maintenance and chic, harboring the belief that all men were cut from the same cloth, seeking nothing more from women than physical pleasure. According to her, men deserve not love, but to be strategically exploited. Despite her lean physique, Harper was quite fetching, boasting a rather ample bosom. It was evident she took great care of her appearance. She confided in me that she had been down the aisle twice. The first time was a reckless mistake, and the second, a calculated move. Her second former spouse, who was a full 25 years her senior, came with financial perks, a flat, a car, the salon itself, and a substantial sum of cash. Harper swapped partners with the ease of changing clothes, convinced that a blend of good looks, telling them exactly what they wanted to hear, and a few savvy maneuvers in the bedroom was all it took to have them wrapped around her finger. Men, she argued, could be easily manipulated using their egos as leverage. Ultimately, I found myself influenced by my new friend, persuaded that life should be lived lavishly and to the fullest, given its fleeting nature. Heidi had become rather dull to me. One fine day, Harper introduced me to her latest admirer, and together, the three of us dined at a hotel restaurant. This suitor, Brady by name, was on a work-related trip, staying at the same hotel. As the evening unwound, Brady began casting lingering glances my way and lavishing attention upon me. However, Harper appeared unfazed. Eventually, I succumbed to his allure, and we ended up spending the night in his hotel room. Subsequently, I found myself in the precarious position of having to justify my actions to both my husband and my friend. Crafting an excuse for my husband wasn't novel. I had strayed before. He absorbed my explanation and forgave me once more, his love for me blinding his judgment. Now, the issue of Harper loomed. Arriving at work, I braced for uproar and perhaps even dismissal, yet Harper's reaction was one of profound calm. She declared no man merited a rift between best friends. Her words were firm. If you like him, he's yours, especially since he had begun to grate on her nerves. My affair with Brady blossomed swiftly. Harper played the role of the alibi masterfully, shielding my ongoing deceit from Heidi's eyes. A declaration of love soon followed from Brady, who proposed exclusivity and even broached marriage, unwilling to share me any longer, even with my husband. I too had fallen deeply for him. With merely a week before his departure, Brady pressed me for a resolution, to converse with Heidi and decide. However, the thought of breaking the news to Heidi daunted me. Had he been less perfect, abandonment might have come easier, yet his faultlessness provided no leverage. Should I bare my soul, confessing my newfound love? The idea of betraying him gnawed at me, yet I yearned for just cause to leave. In a twist of desperation, I coaxed Harper into attempting to charm my husband, crafting the pretext I so urgently sought. Curiously, she consented, relishing these kinds of escapades. Yet the very next day, she stormed in distressed and irate. She claimed that no man could resist her allure, but he was a steadfast clock, declaring, "I love my wife, and that's the end of it." For the first time, a pang of guilt stirred within me. Was I treading the right path? This prompted her to hatch Plan B. On a free day, I set up a festive spread at home, complete with an abundance of booze, despite Heidi's usual restraint with alcohol. Harper was summoned. She slyly slipped a concoction into his drink, which she brought along, and he was out cold. We then lugged him to the bedroom, stripped him entirely and tucked him in. Harper disrobed and lay beside him. Reflecting on this sad chapter, I am repulsed by my own foolishness. Betraying a husband who adored me like no other and abandoning him with guilt was a vile act. The following morning, I walked in on them and threw a fit. My husband was baffled, claiming he recalled nothing, but I refused to heed him. I packed up, hailed a cab, announced I couldn't forgive such betrayal and infidelity, declared my intention to divorce, quit my job at the salon, and resolved to leave the city. My performance as the betrayed spouse was quite convincing. I held my wedding band and the apartment keys. Grabbing my suitcases, I stormed out, leaving behind a sorrowful and guilt-laden husband and a victorious Harper, who was grinning from ear to ear. I arrived at the hotel, where Brady was already awaiting my arrival, and after 2 days we embarked on a journey to his residence in St. Petersburg. Our divorce was swiftly finalized as we had no children and no disputes over property. They simply sent him the divorce papers. A year with Brady felt like a lifetime. The initial 2 months were pure enchantment, but then his demeanor took a turn for the worse. He became excessively jealous, suspecting every passerby, even though he himself indulged in flirtations. I yearned to bear his child, but he coerced me into an abortion. He forbade any form of social interaction and eventually even restricted me from stepping foot outside the house. Furthermore, he exhibited no urgency in making a formal commitment. Eventually, he resorted to violence against me. Moreover, unlike Heidi, he displayed an extreme level of conceit. It struck me that I was reaping what I had sowed. I frequently found myself reminiscing about my ex-husband, reproaching and punishing myself for my despicable actions towards him, cursing myself for all the deceit and harm I had inflicted upon him, and the agony I had caused. I wept for countless days and nights, recalling the beautiful moments we shared. Attempting to reach out to him, I soon discovered that his phone number no longer existed. The same outcome occurred when I tried to contact Harper. I could no longer bear such mistreatment. I mustered the strength to inform Brady that I was leaving and returning to my ex-husband. His response was a cold laugh, accompanied by a sardonic remark, "Good luck." There was no physical restraint preventing my departure. I returned to the city where I once resided with my spouse. Deep down, I was convinced that Heidi's affection for me still remained, and he carried the burden of blame for our separation. A burning desire consumed me. I yearned to see him, to humbly prostrate myself before him, to elucidate every detail, to plead for forgiveness, and to implore him to embark on a fresh start. However, when I dialed the number of the apartment I had walked away from a year ago, it was not Heidi who answered the door. Harper stood before me, scarcely recognizable. Gone was her flighty and arrogant allure, her glamorous and frivolous demeanor. now replaced by a calculated modesty. A serious woman without ostentatious makeup stood in her place, a swollen belly revealing her advanced pregnancy. Clad in a green blouse and a denim sundress, she displayed a side I had never witnessed before. Harper greeted me with a cold but friendly demeanor and welcomed me into the apartment. How everything had transformed within these walls. Euro renovation, new furnishings and drapes. The bedroom now transformed into a nursery. Harper began to divulge her story, recounting that her first union transpired at the tender age of 17. Her spouse was abusive and plagued by a drinking problem, culminating in a grievous beating that rendered her incapable of conceiving, a consequence of miscarriage. This tribulation shaped her into the person she became. Everything shifted when Heidi entered her life. She professed that he was the sole individual deserving of love and happiness in this world, asserting my failure to value him and discarding such a precious and rare gem of a man. She relayed to me the events of that fateful day after I had stormed off from our flat. Harper, too, left in haste, only to face a string of calamities. Her car stubbornly refused to start, or some jerk had jammed up the road. Something inexplicable seemed to be pulling her back toward the apartment. Unfortunately so, Harper dashed back, pounding on the door and frantically calling out his name to no response. A sinking feeling told her something was terribly wrong, a feeling that proved painfully accurate. In a panic, I phoned the emergency services and summoned an ambulance, just to be cautious. They had to break the lock to get in. Inside, they found Heidi, who had attempted suicide by slashing his wrists in the bathroom. Had Harper's return been delayed by even a minute, I might have been mourning at his funeral. He was rushed to the hospital, where they stabilized him with a blood transfusion, Harper steadfast beside him. Upon his recovery, Harper spilled her guts, disclosed every hidden truth, implored for his forgiveness, and revealed that I had fallen for another, yet couldn't bear to confess it myself. Every day she visited him in the hospital, whisked him away as soon as possible, and invested heavily in psychological support. During those hospital visits, Harper discovered the depths of true love, for the first time acknowledging a genuine, profound love for someone else. She strove tirelessly to earn Heidi's forgiveness and rekindle his affection. She told him she was piecing together his heart, which I had shattered, and laboriously carving out her own slice of happiness. The revelation of her pregnancy with Heidi's child crowned her wildest dreams. I queried whether the child she was carrying belonged to my husband. Her response was clear: the baby was with her own spouse. She flashed her wedding band at me, explaining that they had rushed to make their union official the moment they found out about the pregnancy. They had been husband and wife for a half-year. Furthermore, she admonished me against contacting Heidi, advising me to erase him from my memory, swearing she would go to great lengths for him. She doubted Heidi had any desire to communicate with me. Besides, Heidi was due back from his job shortly, and it was advisable for me to leave. An encounter could upset her and was not advisable for her pregnancy's well-being. Stepping outside, despair overwhelmed me. I found fault with everyone: Harper, Brady, and even Heidi, who had seemingly moved on so effortlessly. Suspicion crept in, suggesting Harper might have maneuvered to push me toward Brady to free her path to Heidi. Deep down, I yearned to see Heidi once more, to express my regrets for everything. I'd come to the belief that he still harbored feelings for me, that in Harper, he had merely sought solace.